You're now live. Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to do my typical ramble as we start. It's George. People are being notified. There we go. Here's some people. Hello. Hello. Give it a few more moments of just me waving and talking. You know what? I'll do my thing where I keep talking while drinking a little bit of water. It's arresting viewing. My nose is itchy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Geek Speaks Greek, or Greek Speak, or whatever way. As long as the word Greek's in there, as long as the word speak. I like when there's an emphasis on geek because I'm a geek. My name is George O'Connor. And if you've been watching for a while, I've been doing a series of afternoon lectures about my favorite Greek gods and goddesses. And last Friday we branched out into monsters, so we're just doing the breadth of Greek mythology here. I do a lot of talking, I do a little bit of drawing, I share a little bit of your drawings. It's been really fun so far. I want to say thank you to my local independent bookstore, Word Bookstores, for hosting this. Word Bookstores has 2 locations, one in Brooklyn, one in Jersey City. They're a great independent bookstore that, like many independent businesses, like many businesses, period, are hurting right now because people just can't get out. There's a lot of ways that you can still support Word. You could, they do this thing called the Word-bound book gift thing. Am I saying this right? Got it. Word-bound mystery box, where they will, you call them up on the phone, and you say, my friend likes books about mysteries and boxes, and they'll kind of like come up with a book that fits that exactly, and a bunch of other gifts like puzzles and stuff like this, and they'll send this thing, and it's the most thoughtful gift. So Word is doing great. Well, they're not doing great. We're trying to help Word. Everyone's having a rough time right now. Speaking of Word, we'll be posting more details later today. I'm going to be offering a 3-day comic making workshop through Word. There'll be a post about this on the Word, and I'll put it on my feed as well. It's going to be something you have to sign up for. There's going to be a fee. This is something I'm doing to help Word because they're not getting this traffic they would normally would be, of course, because their stores closed. So this will be it'll be like an intensive. It's not going to be like just me talking at you. We're going to be doing work together. It's going to be done on Zoom. I'll have a lot more of the details to say in the days to come. I'll make a special video about it or something. But this will be something you could sign up to make comics with me, and we'll have some fun together. And it'll be educational, and yeah. And I'll still be doing these as well, too. I just, we'll talk more about this. So I think everybody's probably gotten here by now, right? As if you've just joined me for the first time, this is the part of the show where I like to share some of the artwork that was sent in to me over the last 24 hours. Yesterday, we spoke about my favorite of all the goddesses, Hera. And I'm very, very pleased that we got an enormous amount of Hera artwork, and every bit of it, it's amazing. I was just showing off how cool some of the stuff is. This was the first one I got. This one must have hit like 3 minutes after the episode yesterday. Look how great this is. I love this. And Hera, if you pay attention in my books, is one of the few characters who really changes up her color scheme a lot. The different goddesses and gods tend to wear, even if their outfits change, they tend to wear the same colors. Hera she has like 3 or 4 different color schemes I use for her. The red's my favorite, so well done here. This is from Ella. Here's a picture of her holding up herself. That's adorable. Good job. That's great drawing. Let's see what else we got here today. This one is really good. It's so big, though. Let's see if I can get it so it appears. By the way, I like to call this the highest tech, low tech show on the internet. Here we go. Look at that one. It's a little bit, got a shine on it. There we go. That's great. This is one of those ones, sometimes I actually look at drawings this is based on a drawing I did yesterday. I'll look at drawings and I get almost a sense of deja vu because it looks so much like something I drew. I'm like, wait, I didn't draw that, did I? Oh, wait, I don't like what they wrote here. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I do like it. There's a poem and I read it wrong. I thought it said Juno sucks, but it says, Zeus sucks, I mean he's the worst. Let's give it up for the queen of the universe. Okay. Who else do we have here? Okay, here is a picture of Hera and her peacock. That's pretty awesome. Good peacock. I'm pleased to see how many people did peacocks here. And Hera in peacock dress. In case you're wondering why Hera, of course, one of her symbols, her sacred animal, is the peacock. You know, somehow I managed not to mention yesterday, we even talked about Argus. The reason why the peacock is her sacred animal is after Argus, her 100-eyed watchman, gets killed, she takes those 100 eyes and she puts them on the tail of her bird. I was meaning to get to that, and I forgot to mention it. So I'm glad that people are really picking up on the peacock connection, because I shared my secret fan theory. People were asking, did Hera ever have a love besides Zeus? And my personal theory is maybe it's Argus. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, you can go to my my YouTube channel. A lot of people have been asking about this with the archived. You go to youtube.com/user George Olympians, or just type George Olympians YouTube channel, and I have all my videos archived there. And you can see yesterday's one where I talk at length about how I think Hera maybe had a secret love. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, this is a whole slew of drawings. So here we have, there's a great Hera. It's really beautiful colors in that one. I'm not sure who this is. Can we see who this one is? Could be a Hera. Oh. That's definitely a young Hera when she has her hair down before she has it all bound up because she's married. This is the post-marriage Hera. Still very beautiful, but she's a much more tight and rigid figure. And then look at this one. Mom jumped in and drew a picture. I love this one. We have Hera, we have the peacock, we have in the background, we have Argus. Oh, I closed it. We have a lightning bolt. High-tech, low-tech, like I said, guys. Let's see. Let's do a few more drawings, and then we'll start talking. This is some older stuff. So in days leading up to this, we spoke about other goddesses and gods. Here is a really wonderful drawing of Aphrodite. And this one, I think, came out really good. Check out this Persephone. I really love the look on her face. Like, there's something there. Like, there's a real bit of personality. Well done. Who did that drawing? That was from Ingrid. Age 8. Wow. Age 8. Way to go, Ingrid. If you've watched a lot, you know that we get a lot of emails from a very talented young dancer and artist named Shiloh. This is his drawing of Hera. I like that she's kind of wearing, like, her dress almost looks like it's like a shimmy dress. Like, I can see her just, like, you know, dancing a tango or something in that. That's really great. And let's do one more. These are from Joseph. Joseph's written in before too. And he did the same thing, because we talked about Hera and her 2 stages. There is Hera as a young, unmarried maiden, when she's got her hair down and she's happier. And still happy, but in a different way. There's Hera as the queen of the universe. So, great stuff, everybody. Thank you all so much for sharing. As I said yesterday, I'm a really big fan of Hera. So a lot of people just automatically assume she's the bad guy, and they always say terrible things about her, and I'm always the first one to defend her. And so today, we're going to talk about her son, Hephaestus. And I'm not going to be the guy who defends throwing a baby out a window off a mountain, but I guess I'm going to be the guy who defends throwing a baby, because I'm saying, oh, Hera's not bad. And that's exactly the most prominent story of what she did to Hephaestus as a baby. Hephaestus. Okay. I'm going to draw a picture of Hephaestus to start. Normally I end up talking a lot. You know what? This is back a little bit far. I'm going to try to move this up just a tad. There we go. Hephaestus. I'm going to draw Hephaestus as a baby. So, we've all seen babies, right? Babies are cute, but when a baby's first born, they kind of look weird and lumpy. Like, maybe like they're... Have you ever noticed, like, sometimes babies look like they're made of, like, a pile of salami? Like, they just look weird, right? Like, Hephaestus was no exception to that rule. As a baby, he was, we'll say he's a pretty ugly baby. Because, like, I mean, first off, check out these eyebrows, right? Hephaestus had some serious baby eyebrows. Most babies don't have eyebrows at all. This guy was born with, like, woolly caterpillars on his face. He had a little tiny cute baby nose. Let's make his eyes closed. He's like, oh, it's all light out here. Give him a mouth, big weird, lumpy shaped head. I mean, again, exception of the eyebrows, most of this isn't that different from a baby. Babies have weird, lumpy heads. You only have that soft spot that's terrifying to touch, all that stuff. It's called the fontanelle. There's the outline of it. Let's give him it's got a couple of hairs sticking out. He's just not attractive. But he's not unattractive. He's a baby. You know, babies they're kind of adorable in the fact that they're ugly. Let's give him some arms so he doesn't look like he's just a weird baby head sitting there. Okay. There's baby Hephaestus. Now, Hephaestus is unique among the Olympians in that he was cast out of Olympus. And not just once. There are two major accounts of when he got cast out. And they differ in several different ways. His age, who did the casting. But the story that people tend to remember most, because it is kind of hard to defend, is the time when he was an infant and Hera threw him off. So, like I said, I'm not really going to defend this, but if you read my book, Hephaestos, I talk about this quite a bit in there. Hera is married to Zeus. Zeus is the worst husband in the universe. At this point, they've already had their first child, Ares. He's a little bit bloodthirsty. He likes to stab, 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 kill, kill, kill. They're like, well, we have some problems with this, but psychology hadn't been invented yet, so they know what to take him to. And then she got pregnant a second time, Hera. And this would be the child that would be Hephaestus. Now, Zeus, not being the most faithful husband, not even close, he actually, about this time, by my reckoning, I did some timeline comparisons. This is when he was having his affair with Leto. Leto, if you've watched previous episodes or you just know Greek mythology, you will know, she is the mother of Apollo and Artemis. And so basically, while his wife is at home pregnant with his child, in fact, while his wife is giving birth to his child, he's off running around with Leto. So Hera's in this position where her husband has left her, like, alone. She's in the middle of giving birth, which is not an easy thing. And she gives birth, and this is the baby that comes out. And here's my defense of her. I don't think she was in her right mind. It doesn't make this okay. She at least knows it's a god. He's a god. So she can't do anything to really hurt him. But she takes this baby, and she takes him to the edge of Mount Olympus, and she's like, whoop, and throws him off. I know. It's really bad. It's bad. It's bad. You can't really justify it. Hera, come on. Baby goes flying through the air, right? Luckily, he's a god. It wouldn't have killed him. Wouldn't even really have hurt him. But he was a baby. Wouldn't have known what happened. Luckily, he's actually caught down on Earth. He's caught by Thetis. And see, I should do reviews before I do this. He's caught by Thetis, and I'm forgetting the other one. Maybe my assistant could look that up and get back to me on that one. It's in my book. So he's okay, but he grows up independent of Olympus. It's a rough story, right? So there's another version that tells of the birth of Hephaestus, and I'm definitely not a fan of this one. It doesn't work chronologically for many reasons. In this version, and this is what I would call the sexist version of this one, Zeus famously, depending on how you look at it, gave birth out of his own head by himself to Athena. That doesn't count Metis at all. It's Thetis and... Is it Eurydice? No. Eurydice. I almost said Eurydice. Darn it! Oh, I hate that I didn't know that! Everybody, even a geek speak Greek like me sometimes forgets names. And people are saying, yeah. Yep, nice, okay. Yeah, guys, I hope you don't think badly of me. I've been trapped inside. I don't know what's going on anymore. So in this other version of the myths, right, she's jealous of Zeus giving birth to this, like, really talented child out of his head all by himself. Like, they've just, Metis doesn't matter, I guess. She's like, wow, you gave birth to, like, the smartest Olympian who's the best fighter out of your skull? Well, I'll show you. I'm going to make my own baby all by myself. And Zeus is like, yeah, you do that. And she goes, I will. And so in this story, she then eats a bunch of lettuce and then takes her palm and slaps the floor and gives birth. And then it's like Hephaestus, and he's like this weird, ugly, lumpy baby. And the idea behind that is like, well, of course it's a weird, ugly baby. She's a lady. She gave birth by herself without a man helping her. So I hate that story. I also hate it for other reasons. That's just weird that she, like, what's the lettuce? I mean, come on. I know people who eat lettuce every day. Very few of them spontaneously give birth to weird, lumpy babies, right? That's just a very strange bit of that story. It's like, lettuce? Really? The other thing, I just got sidetracked by my own weirdness there. Like, it's just, come on, that's just like a bad story. The other thing that I think is really key, the story of the birth of Athena is one of the most famous Greek myths. People know this one, even if they don't know their myths, right? And in that story, it's normally Zeus has this pounding headache because he's got two goddesses living in his head, and he can't take it anymore, and he goes to his son, Hephaestus, to split open his head, right? Okay. How on earth do you make a lettuce slapping the ground birth in imitation of the birth of Athena, like for Hephaestus, if Hephaestus is the guy that freed Athena from Zeus's head? It doesn't work chronologically, which gave me a good excuse to throw that one in the garbage heap. It's like, nah. You know what? Hephaestus is the child of Zeus and Hera, and he came out weird looking, and there's a reason. I have a theory for that, but I'll get to that afterwards. So whichever reason is, your enemy and Thetis, they catch him, they raise him. He eventually makes his way back to Mount Olympus because turns out he's the god of crafts. He's the god of many things, but he is the god of beautiful workmanship. He keeps this quote unquote ugliness with him his entire life, but he expresses his beauty through his hands, through the things he creates. He is the god of technology. And among the things we know he creates, he's able to create automatons, which is a word for robot, that were so lifelike you couldn't tell. They literally breathed and stuff. So he's this super duper genius. He makes Tony Stark look like Tony Duh. He's great, right? He's got these incredible powers and stuff. So he's able to convince these the gods to bring him back to Olympus. He's also the god of fire. In fact, my book, I even named it the god of fire. And that brings me to something else I want to talk about, that a lot of times, I think in the modern day, we really like things to be very neatly divided. We like to organize stuff. And I think it throws people off that the Greeks have a lot of what we could consider overlap for their gods. Like the way Athena and Ares are both gods of war, and the way Artemis and Hera are both gods of childbirth. We're like, wait, why? I'm like, these things are big, right? There's a lot of stuff. And the fire difference, Hestia was the goddess of fire, in your house, in your, the hearth, the fire you would gather around. We spoke about Hestia. You can actually catch the episode on my YouTube. And Hephaestus, he was the fire of the foundry, of the forge, where people made things. It's sooty, it's loud, it's very hot. And that's also why he is the god of volcanoes. Cool factoid, his Roman name is Vulcan, which is the word. That's where we get volcanoes from. Basically volcanoes, just like Vulcans. Because he was the god of that. That's the sort of fire he is. And I think you could see the difference there. There's a definite difference between the nice fire you have in your fireplace and the explosive fire that you would see in a forge where the fans beat it into giant flames. Or the flames of a volcano. I don't know who would be the god of house fires, but I suspect it's probably more like Vulcan. I think he's probably more the destructive attributes. Maybe not. Or Hephaestus, not Vulcan, because, he's also the god who creates. That's something I want to look into. Maybe they were just oh, that's just a third thing. That's just yeah, we know that's not the god's fault. He's also, and we've mentioned her a few times in tandem, he has the connection to Athena. They're both the gods of crafts. And Athena's crafts tend to be more in terms of weaving and things like this, and he tends to be more in metallurgy and the crafting of jewelry and stuff like that, weapons and things. But the two of them, you would actually see in temples, they would often be worshipped together. And they would have festival days they'd share together, which is funny because in my mind I kind of ship them, that I think Hephaestus is a little bit in love with Athena, and Athena's kind of not in love with anybody. So we've talked about this on a few other episodes too. I'm going to draw my version of Hephaestus as he appears in most of the books as an adult. So we've seen him as a baby. Now we're going to see him as the adult. One thing he doesn't grow out of, he's still got those sick eyebrows. Now this is a question that I wrestled with a lot. And I think this was even asked yesterday and I didn't get a chance to answer it. We got so many good questions yesterday, by the way, that I think we're going to do a bonus episode just where I answer questions I never got to. Because there were so many great questions, we couldn't possibly answer them all. So guys, keep up the great work. Questions are killing it. Somebody asked, why is Hephaestus ugly? Olympians can look like anything they want. And in fact, in the myths, Hephaestus himself takes different forms. And so that was something when it came time to design my versions of the gods, I thought, I'm why is he ugly. Like, that doesn't make any sense. In fact, in a lot of sources, most sources, he's even mentioned as having legs that are kind of shriveled and don't work. I'm like, why would he actually... We know gods can't be injured. Why does he have an injury? And none of that really made sense to me until I started really thinking about his personality. We started off talking about him as a little tiny baby. He's thrown off Olympus. He's turned away by his parents. His dad's not even there. He's thrown out by, like, Hera as soon as he's born. He's kind of like, as he becomes aware, as he grows up, he knows that he was like, yeah, your mom looked at you, thought you were ugly, and threw you away. That's a hard thing to hear. And so I think, and I've talked about this before, I think how the gods kind of subconsciously portray themselves in a lot of the ways that they feel. And I think with him, I think he's like, I'm the ugly guy, so he makes himself ugly. And I stopped the drawing here at this point to show you something. If you look at the actual structure of the way I draw him, his features are very strong, very broad, very sharp. He's not ugly. He doesn't take care of himself well. He's got a ponytail, which, I mean, whatever. So I used to have a ponytail. It's just not for everybody. He's got like the straggly beard. He doesn't brush it. He hunches over. He's got bad posture. He doesn't bother cleaning himself off. So he ends up looking a lot worse than he is. Let me give him his beard. You'll know that one of the things I talk about is I always put clues as to what they're the god of in their design. He has red, curly, flame-like hair. And when he gets mad, which brings me to something I want to talk about next, his hair actually does become fire, because he is the god of fire. So his facial hair has like a fiery aspect to it. His hair is pulled back kind of sloppily. Let's do a little bit of fire there. He's like a little bit annoyed because he's like, stop saying I'm ugly. So there's an Hephaestos. Now, let's talk about his temper. Somebody asked me the other day who I thought were the nicest gods. And I mentioned Hestia, number 1, probably. Hermes, number 2. And I've been wondering about where Hephaestos would fit in that. Because Hephaestos is undeniably one of the most gentle of the gods, but he's got a real temper. One might call his temper volcanic. And it really fits in with his personality. It makes a lot of sense. He is a god who everybody disrespects him. There is a famous sequence in the Iliad where he's trying to make peace and he's going around serving drinks to the other gods to kind of stop them fighting with each other. And he walks in this way because he's got the limp and they're making fun of him. Now, I've heard that one of the reasons he has the limp is maybe because he is the god of fire. And if you look at fire, it kind of lurches and maybe that's like a physical representation of that. I already said why I think he has the limp. I think he carries these things as subconscious manifestations. Like he's just like, yeah, I got thrown off and it hurt my legs and like I'm ugly and stuff. So he makes himself look this way, but he can make himself look like anything he wants. He can make himself look like my pen, probably not a good move. He can make himself look like, he can make himself look like another god. He could look at his dad and be like, I look just like Zeus now. And he could look like Zeus he wanted to, but he doesn't. And I think it's all subconscious. But his temper is what maybe prevents him from being one of the nicest gods. Oh no, actually, I'll say he is a nice guy. Just don't get him wrong. And like the thing is, you have to really push him really far for him to explode. And there's a few instances in myths where he does. I mentioned the Iliad. So despite his mom treating him poorly, he is very devoted to Hera. And when the Greeks and Trojans are fighting each other, some gods support the Trojans, some gods support the Greeks. And Hephaestus falls on the Greek side of things. He sides with his mom. She's on the Greek side. And she sends him to fight the river Scamander, who's actually a god himself. And he like sets a river on fire. This is a god made of water. It's a river. And his power is so insane, he boils him. Because he just snaps. When he snaps, it's truly terrifying. There's one of the most satisfying scenes in any of my books. So, he's famous for being... Here's a picture of him all burnt up and angry and mad. He's famous for being married to Aphrodite. Basically, we talked about this in the Aphrodite one, but long story short, Zeus felt very threatened by Aphrodite's power, so he arranged for her to be married to who he viewed as someone really safe, someone he could help control her power with. So he marries her off to the ugly god, Hephaestus. And they have a marriage that I wouldn't say is happy. Hephaestus loves her, certainly. I think even she loves him in a certain way. He tries all he can to make her happy. He makes her all the beautiful jewels, everything he could think of. But he's awkward. He just doesn't know how to... She's a lot to handle. She's more than any one god person whoever could handle, for sure. And eventually it just doesn't work out. And when it doesn't work out, she's having an affair with his brother, Ares, the god of war. And he gets wind of this. Helios, the sun, tells him. And because Hephaestos is very smart and surprisingly crafty. Yeah, well, not crafty, he's good with making stuff, but he's crafty with traps too. He makes this net that's invisible to the naked eye. Invisible even to the Olympian eye for the most part, which is Olympians can see just about anything. And he puts it above her bed. And it's triggered to drop when she sits on it. And he dropped this net. It's unbreakable, too. It drops and traps Ares and her together. And he's like, oh, proof. And he gets a divorce. A lot of people don't realize that. And that's hilarious to me. I don't know why. I mean, divorce is not a funny subject. It's a very difficult thing for a lot of people, although a lot of people might be happier afterwards. I think both Aphrodite and Hephaestus were happier afterwards. By the time, so everybody thinks of them as married, right? But by the time of the Iliad, by the time of the Trojan War, they are divorced. It's actually said. She's in an open relationship with Ares at that point, and Hephaestus, has remarried. A lot of people don't realize that. He's remarried to Aglaia. She's one of the Charites, one of the handmaidens of Aphrodite, who was actually... not in this book. She's you could see a picture of her in she's one of the 3 women on the cover of Aphrodite. She's the one all the way in the front. That's Aglaia. He remarries this other goddess, and that one seems to be much more happy relationship. They have several children together. It's just a happier thing for him. So good for him. Poor Hephaestus, the most put upon and disrespected of the Olympians. And to disrespect the Olympians, that takes him hubris. This guy could he's all powerful pretty much. He could make robots that you can't even tell are people. I mean he could do he's got some amazing abilities. Why would you ever disrespect a dude who can do those things? I think I've probably covered almost everything I want to say about him. There's so much more to say, but without getting too much into things, I think this would be a good time to throw out my first request for if people have some questions. And I'll take some Q&A. Do we have any yet?
Not related to Hephaestus.
Well, we have a question not related to Hephaestus, so let's hear that one first.
Do you think the Titans even know who they are anymore due to being imprisoned for so long? Do they have any memories still?
Oh, this is a really cool question. This is referring to... So when the first generation of Olympians were born... there was a previous generation of gods, the Titans. They're the gods of time, right? And they've been, ever since when Zeus and his siblings were born, all the siblings were swallowed by Kronos, their father. Zeus frees them. They have a big battle called the Titanomachy, or the Clash of the Titans, and the Olympians win. And they overthrow the Titans. The Olympians become the new lords of the universe, masters of the universe, if you will. And they lock up the Titans. And the question is... do I think if the Titans even have a sense of identity anymore, or if so long locked underground, away from it all, have they kind of forgotten who they are? Which is a really fun question, because I'm going to get a little meta with it. Because the thing about the Titans, there's a few you could pick out. There's Kronos. He certainly gets a lot of play. There's Atlas. We all know Atlas. Atlas is the guy who holds up the sky. There's Prometheus, who I'll be speaking about at length on Friday. There's a few Titans who stand up, but a lot of the Titans are treated rather interchangeably. They represent certain aspects of time or the reckoning of time. There's some theories that they relate to different poles of the earth. Like, for instance, Polos is up north, and Hyperion is in the east where the sun rises because he has a connection to the sun. And there's all these different things. I think Krios is the one in the south because he's related to the constellation of the ram, and he has ram horns. There's all these kind of interesting things about what they relate to, but they don't have much personality. They're not very personified. If anything, they're kind of made notable by their offspring and who descends from them. So I think that's a fascinating idea if someone were to write a story where the Titans, so long imprisoned, since, the time before time, really, to speak, since the gods overthrew them, maybe they have lost a sense of who they are. Because they kind of don't have the clearest delineations to begin with. So that's a really fun idea. That might be an idea that I could see if somebody else doesn't use it. I feel like I could use that idea in something like where the Titans come out like, hey, who are we? What's going on? Any other questions?
In your books, we see Ares hanging out in the forge. What's your take on their relationship?
Okay, so somebody was mentioning how in a lot of my books, like you'll just see like little moments of downtime between the gods on Olympus. And more often than not, I would show, especially if you look in earlier books, you'll see Ares just hanging out with Hephaestus in his forge. And the question was, what's my take on their relationship? I mean, they're like a lot of brothers. They get along on some levels, but Ares is a very mean older brother. But Hephaestus kind of has a thing where he sticks around people who are mean to him, like his mom. Man, I didn't even know what I didn't even mention. I didn't even get into the whole time as an adult when his dad threw him off. For me, Zeus throwing him off is the way worse of the two. I feel like I should almost go back and do that, but we're talking about other stuff now. So like we'll save that for another time. Just Zeus throwing off. Why does nobody give Zeus a hard time? So I think that they do have a certain amount of brotherly love. And, you know, they are the kids of Zeus and Hera. So, and along with Hebe, and if you choose to personify Eileithyia, although I haven't in these books, they're like the actual children of the king and queen of gods. So they have a certain like inner circle thing going on there. But one of the reasons, honestly, that I draw him hanging out in the forge a lot is because Ares is in love with Aphrodite. And a lot of those scenes are set when Aphrodite and Hephaestus are still together. In fact, I'm not even sure if I've ever really come out and say, because I like the timelines to be, there's a definite timeline that I've worked out for which myth happens where, but there's some details I like to leave a little vague. So I don't think I've ever actually said in the main text of Olympians that he remarries Aglaia, even though I think that's happened, because it makes for more interesting drama them to be in this perpetual state of like relationship that's falling apart because she's having an affair with his brother. So they do love each other. They get along sort of thing. They like to fight a lot. If you want to see the most cathartic beat up in the entire series, it's when Hephaestus beats up Ares and Hephaestus. It's awesome.
That's the next question.
Oh.
Can you talk about the time where Hephaestus wrecked Ares?
So apparently I led into the next question. Can I talk about the time when Hephaestus wrecked Ares? So actually, you know, this is a good time to talk about the second time he's thrown off. Hera and Zeus have a very tumultuous relationship because he's the worst husband ever lived. We talked about this. She's not a great mom. We've already talked about that too. They're having a huge fight on Mount Olympus. And Hephaestus, who is so soft of heart, and in this instance maybe a little soft of head, he plays the peacemaker a lot. I even mentioned the time when he went around with drinks trying to make all the gods stop fighting. He likes the gods not to fight. And he goes, his dad and mom are screaming at each other. And it's just, they have a dysfunctional relationship. They just need to end it. But we talked about in the Hera episode, there's reasons why I guess the goddess of marriage doesn't want to have a divorce. He goes and he interrupts and he's like, hey, Dad, maybe you should. And Zeus throws him off Olympus as a full-grown adult this time. And this is, you know, it's depending. Some people say this is the only time he got thrown off. Some myths say he was thrown off twice. I like that he was thrown off twice because there's such different stories. He sails through the air. I think it's something crazy. Like, it's for days. He's airborne. Like, Zeus, like, throws him into orbit. And he comes crashing down to Earth on the island of Lemnos and leaves a huge crater. And this, for me, actually kind of makes sense where he'd maybe pick up the limp if he was not a god. Of course, he could just heal himself. But this time he's not a baby. And this time there's nobody to catch him. This is the full, unfocused, like focused intellect of Hephaestus, one of the most brilliant of all the gods. And he is angry. So he makes these thrones for the other gods. Nobody comes to check on him. And one of the thrones, well, in the myth, it very famously traps Hera, his mom. I kind of play in the book where it's like, I hint it's maybe a throne meant to catch his dad. This throne is unbreakable. It locks her in and suspends her upside down in the air, and she's trapped. And she's freaking out. None of the gods can, like, there's a scene in the book where I have, like, Poseidon's trying to open it, and Ares is hitting with the sword, and she's screaming, like, ah! And Zeus tries to blow up the lightning bolt. Nothing's working. Hephaestos' craftsmanship is so amazing that the other Olympians cannot rescue her. And she's like, look, I can live forever. I don't want to be stuck underground, upside down in the air forever. Somebody better solve this. And Ares is like, I'll do this. So he goes to Lemnos. And he gets to Lemnos and he sees his brother. And his brother's made this huge fortification for himself. And it's a cool moment in the story. And it's actually from the myths where they kind of like yell at each other. Like they both have a lot of issues worked up with this thing. Like, you had an affair with my wife. And he's like, you complain too much. Everybody hates me. Just deal with it. You know, they all hate you too. And in the myth, like they describe how like Hephaestos just takes burning slag, like metal, molten metal, and just pelts Ares with it. So I actually don't even show the fight because it's so satisfying where you see Ares all chest puffed out and muscular, and he's very powerful, and he's in his brother's face, and he's just saying like, I'm going to come up there and drag you back to Olympus by your little tiny legs. And then Hephaestus appears in the window, and he's like glowing white hot with flame, and he's like, come get me. And the next time you see Ares, he's just been scorched. Like, he'll be better, you know, but his hair is missing in patches, his armor's melted, he's all sooty, and he's like, he didn't want to come. And it's super, like, I could have drawn him, like, actually getting beaten up, but just having it happen, like, the panel-to-panel transition, for me, like, so that the reader gets to fill in, like, they see Ares and all his, Ares is the most handsome god in his resplendent glory and his gleaming armor, and the next time you see him he's all like, oh, got beaten up real bad. It's very satisfying.
Does Hephaestus resent Zeus?
Does Hephaestus resent Zeus? I think he does, and I think he resents his father immensely. I'm pretty sure, like I made it my version, that he actually set the throne that trapped Hera. I think that was for Zeus. Because the stories are very clear. He sends those thrones, the trap thrones, after his father throws him off. That's very specifically in response to something his dad did. And his father threw him off because he interceded in an argument on behalf of the two of them. He interceded on his mom's side. And you do see, even though she treated him terribly as an infant, there is this thread throughout stories where he is incredibly devoted to her. There's a lot of parallels between Hephaestus and Athena, which I talked about up front, and some of them I find more valid than others. But in much the same way Athena can always be counted on having Zeus's back, I feel like Hephaestus can be counted on to have Hera's back. And so I think he does really resent his dad. But you probably don't want to have too many head-to-head confrontations with Zeus, especially if you're Hephaestus, who is a little bit on the shy and unassuming thing. It would be a fascinating battle, I think, to see if like you ever saw like a really like volcanically blown his top Hephaestus against Zeus. I mean, I'd want to see that. Or actually, probably wouldn't want to see that.
So do you think that Hera has ever apologized to Hephaestus, and what would their relationship be now?
Oh, cool question. Do I think that Hera ever apologized to Hephaestus? And what do you think their relationship is like now? The book Hephaestus, I kind of like, that's kind of like a thread that goes through the entire thing. Where at the very end, because Hera is the one that he ends up getting trapped on the throne. I'm going to show you a picture of the throne just so you have an idea, since I've evoked it multiple times now, what it looks like. I don't think Hera would ever fully apologize. I think that she's got some faults. I don't really have a great picture here. That's her being spent there and turning upside down. The shackles are made of adamantine. Even the gods have trouble breaking that. And this one is like enchanted. And she never apologizes, but at the end, it's not to reveal the whole end of the story, he has to come back to Olympus to free her. This is his second time being thrown off. He makes his triumphant return. And this is a very popular scene in ancient Greek art. You see it on all these vases and things like this. He returns and he frees her. And she doesn't say, I'm sorry for the way I've treated you these years, but she does thank him. And they have a little look. I like to convey a lot with like looks in my books, one of the great things about writing with comics is you can tell the story with both the pictures and the words. And a lot of times I like to let things be unsaid because I like to let the images speak it. So I hope that this image conveys that Hera looks at him and she's kind of like, I'm sorry. And he's like, oh, I know. He's happy with it. You could look, there's a look on his face. He's beaming. His cheeks are pink and rosy because it's the closest he'll ever get from an apology from his mom.
In your book Ares, who does Hephaestus fight?
Oh, in the book Ares, when the gods famously split off, and some of them fight for the Greek side, some fight for the Roman side, the question was, who does Hephaestus fight? And it's a little bit of a bummer because he's not in the big lineup, because he's already fought Scamander. And that's also the river. And also, it's a bummer, too, because Scamander's clearly not on the same level. He's not an Olympian. He is a river god. He's very powerful. But it's like Hephaestus does the thing where Hera's like, go down there and teach that river a lesson. And he just he's glowing white hot again. And so Scamander, to describe the way he looks. Did you ever see like Spider-Man Far From Home where he fights the giant water guy? It's like a giant water guy, this huge river monster. And like Hephaestus just goes down there glowing red hot and is like wrestling him. And he's so hot that like the river's burning. Like he's burning water and the river's like, I can't take it. And that's actually the first God against God matchup. And it starts the big thing. But that's it. He doesn't get together and fight anybody else. Because, man, like, that would have been bad news for anybody on the Trojan side that he would have fought. I don't know that there's anybody on the Trojan side that he wouldn't have absolutely demolished at that point.
Did Aphrodite introduce Hephaestus and Aglaea as some kind of peace offering?
Oh, wow, what a cool question. Did Aphrodite introduce Hephaestus and Aglaea as some sort of peace offering? Because Aglaea is one of her handmaidens, and did she actually be like, hey, I'm sorry, Hefty, this didn't work out between us, and I love your brother and like 11 billion other people, but, Aglaea, look at her, she's pretty nice, huh? I don't know. I'm not aware of any story that occurs, but it's kind of fun to think that she might have. I'm not sure, honestly, if I was Hephaestus, that I would like really want to be set up by my ex with one of her coworkers. I hope to think it was something that happened more naturally, but it is Hephaestus, and I could see that kind of being the case. Here's what I think happened in my mind. This is my headcanon I'm making up on the spot, right? Hephaestus, was always being, the devoted husband as much as he could to Aphrodite, but he always noticed that there was Aglaea who always treated him with a little bit of kindness. We'll say that Talia and Euphrosyne were always kind of like jerks to him, right? But the other one, she just had this moment, so he always had a little bit of a soft spot for her. Because Aglaea felt bad. She just looked and she saw that she knew what was going on. She knew Aphrodite had many other loves besides Hephaestus. So when the big split happened, maybe they just, talked a few times. They lived for thousands of years. They had a lot of time to talk. And then they're kind of like, you know what? Like, she's like, I think you make really nice things. He's like, thanks. I think you're really nice too. And then he asked her out for an awkward date, and it was really terrible, but she was still kind of amused by it because he was, good intentioned. And then eventually they fell in love and had a whole bunch of kids.
Speaking of kids.
Yeah.
Do his children turn out like him?
The question is, do Hephaestus' children turn out like him? And I guess that means kind of brutish and not attractive. No, they don't. Which I think gives further credit to my idea that he affects an unattractive appearance more as a reflection of his inner self. Now, of course, his wife that he has his children with, he's maybe the dad of Eros, depending on the source, but I think we talked about that in the Aphrodite thing, that there's other candidates that make more sense. But he has 3 daughters by Aglaea who are all renowned in their beauty. Now, Aglaea is a goddess of beauty, so maybe that overwhelms it. But no, I think his kids, and a lot of his kids, he had a lot of like demigod offspring too, and they're not unattractive either. I think it's just he's had a bad time. He's the whipping boy of Mount Olympus, so I think he manifests himself in a way that's not what he's capable of.
Other than the gods who were there at his birth, did any of the other gods get to see him as a baby?
Huh. So that's an interesting question. Other than the gods who were actually present at his birth, did any other of the gods get to meet Hephaestus as a baby? So aside from the Olympians who were assembled, and what I showed in my book by doing my, like, figuring out who would have been alive at that point, it's the whole first generation except for Hades because he hangs out underground all the time. Prometheus, who is not an Olympian but was around, he's the god who's kind of delivering. Zeus actually doesn't see him as a baby because Zeus is off having a good time somewhere. So Zeus doesn't see him as a baby unless Zeus looks down from clouds like, whoa, ugly baby. And then I guess Thetis and Eurynomy would have seen him. Thetis and Eurynomy. That's an interesting idea. Like, I wonder if we could kind of, like, do some figuring out, like, who would have been in the world of... Helios would have, because Helios sees all, right? So Helios would have been above and been like, oh, ugly baby. Alternately, I guess Selene would have seen the same. Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, who knows, maybe one day the gods were all hanging around with Dionysus drinking some wine, and they're like, hey, I heard you were a really ugly baby. And he's like, oh yeah, you want to see what it looked like? And then he turned himself back into a baby for a second. They're like, ugh. And then he's like, yeah, I look better now. I don't know. That's a really cool question. I love, like, the ideas. Some of these questions, like, we've been enjoying these questions so much. Like the ideas that, like, these things come up with, like, that's stuff I've never thought of. Like, what a great idea.
This is in reference to when Ares and Aphrodite got caught.
Okay.
So do Aphrodite or Ares resent Apollo or Hermes for their laughter against them? And does Hephaestus?
So in there is the scene in Hephaestus, which I mentioned briefly, where he's woven this invisible net. He captures Ares and Aphrodite in flagrante delicto, and it's adapted from the Homeric hymn to this story. The original story is the Homeric hymn to Hephaestus. And the hymn is very specific, and I love this, that basically, like, Hephaestus catches them, and he calls the other gods. Zeus is not about. He doesn't come. But Poseidon and Hermes and Apollo come. And one of my favorite things to write is Hermes and Apollo as bros, just kind of being like jerky brothers together. And they definitely are. And they kind of, like, in the original stories, he's like, Apollo's like, hey, what would you give to be in Ares' place? And Hermes is like, let me tell you. And the question is, like, are they mad at them for that? Yeah, I think they are, but they don't, it's not like a long-lasting madness. Like angry, I'd say angriness, because madness sounds like they go crazy. In fact, Aphrodite definitely, I would say, like, she ends up having a fling with Hermes, and I think that happens after this. In fact, I'm pretty sure it does, so she gets over it, certainly. I think it's, like, more, like, in the moment, like, they're really angry, because, like, that's the angriest I've ever drawn Aphrodite. It's really fun. Her mouth gets enormous as she's just screaming at them because they're just like, yuk, 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 like being jerks. What's also funny about that story is Artemis and Athena are also there, but because they're very, very, pure goddesses, they don't really go in. They just stand at the doorway. And, like, in the original story, they're kind of like, this isn't proper. This is bad. What's happening? It's such a fun story. It's one of those things where there's a real, like, it's a terrible thing that happens to Hephaestus, but it captures such real human moments of interactions between the gods. And that's some of my favorite stuff, when they really act like a family. And that's just like, that's like a big, goofy family moment.
Speaking of Athena,
mm-hmm.
Do you think Athena respects Hephaestus even if she doesn't reciprocate his romantic feelings?
The question is, so I mentioned how and I've stated in the Athena episode how there's some myths that support this, that Hephaestus has an unrequited love for Athena, and the question was, do I think that she respects Hephaestus despite the fact she doesn't return his feelings? I think she does, but I think even Athena, Athena's like how do we put this? She's not great at social cues. We talk a lot about the intelligence of the gods. She's very, very smart in some ways, but I think her emotional intelligence isn't the best. So I think she does have a tendency to overlook Hephaestus, not in the same way some of the other gods do. Some of the gods are outright cruel. Like, Apollo will just pick on him. Ares will pick on him. I don't think Athena would ever do that, but I think she kind of is just like the way like a lot of people are when somebody who's like harmless and good intention, but you just could never look at them that way. She's like, oh, that's nice. Thank you. Thank you. I made a point of showing that she maybe looks at him like a little bit more like, in Hephaestos. The book Hephaestos is really, it's kind of like a long, slow simmer of him being treated poorly, erupting, taking a very crafty revenge and earning a lot of respect for it. And so I think after that, he kind of like showed like, you don't want to have me as an enemy, and I don't want to be anyone's enemy. I just want to be respected. I think after the events of this book, his standing in Olympus in general is better. After the events of this book is definitely when he remarries and meets Aglaia, for instance. I mean, he's already met her, but like that's him changing his whole set. It's like he hits the reset button on Olympus. He's like, you kidding me? You jerks threw me off again? Look what I could do. None of you could stop this. None of you could stop me. I'm back. Treat me better. And they think they do.
So speaking of Ares, does Ares have a softer side that he's hiding? And if so, who does he reveal that to other than Aphrodite?
Oh, okay. I've actually talked about this a little bit before in other episodes, but it's worth recapping here. One of the things I've noticed while doing my research for Ares, the question was, just to repeat it in case you can't hear off to the side, does he have a soft side, and who does he show it to besides Aphrodite? He does, first off, yeah, he shows it to Aphrodite. Like, that's the person who he, like, his confidant. He has a real soft side when it comes to family. Not necessarily his brothers and sisters. He's a jerk with them. But I found many different myths where he is either protecting or avenging his children. And it stands out. It was almost like every region, every principality of Greece has a variation on this story. To the point where there would often be, outside of towns, an area called the Areophage, which it's like the hill of Ares. And there would be a local myth attached to it where Ares like horribly murdered someone because they did one of his kids wrong. And he was put on trial by the other gods and viewed not guilty. But like this would be a regional story. There's many variations of it throughout the ancient world. So he has this real soft spot towards his kids. He has a lot of kids, like many of the gods do. He's not quite the philanderer of his father or his uncle Poseidon, but he's had a lot of partners. And actually, in the book Ares, he kind of risks the closest a god could get to eternal damnation, where Zeus is like, gods, you got to stay off the battlefield, or I'm going to throw you in Tartarus. That's like where like the Titans are being kept. And he risks going on the battlefield because his son is killed. He's like, I don't care. It's mortal. Just like this kid who's just like son of Ares, but he gets murdered. I mean, not murdered. He gets killed in battle. And Ares is willing to throw it all away because he has this, like, and I think the thing about Ares, my personal take on him, he is very sensitive. And one of the reasons he acts out the way he does, he's not great at expressing himself. I think Aphrodite has a good effect on that, is giving someone to talk to. But he has like these big feelings that he doesn't know how to process except through violence.
Speaking of Tartarus, do you think it more punishing to hold up the sky or be in Tartarus?
Ooh, another Titans question. Do I think it's a worse punishment to be locked away in Tartarus, which is so far beneath the surface of the earth that you could drop an anvil and it would take 24 hours to reach the bottom? You're not getting a lot of sunlight there. In darkness. To be locked away there with most of the Titans, or to have the punishment of Atlas. Atlas is a second-generation Titan, but he's still, in stature, in size, and appearance, he matches the other first-generation Titans. He gets a special treatment where his job is to hold up the sky. He has to, like... And so he's on the surface world, but he's constantly holding up... I do the math of how much the atmosphere weighs in Hera, and it's like, you don't think air weighs anything because, it's air. But like air, it weighs like billions of tons. So he's holding this immense amount of weight up in the air all the time. But he does get to be out in the surface world, right? So the other Titans are locked away in little cells, crammed in there. They never see the sun. And even if they somehow escape, they're still so far underground. How would they ever get away, right? I feel like Atlas maybe has the better job. He gets to see his daughters, the Hesperides. They come and they visit him. he meets Perseus, he meets Heracles. Although those two stories don't make sense because Perseus is the grandfather of Heracles and he kills Atlas. But then how does Heracles meet him later? That's why we don't tell that story. So he gets to meet people. He gets to see stuff. At least he's got that. I mean, it's better. He gets to see the sun go by every day. He's like, hey, cousin, how's it going? Son's like, hey, hold up the sky. Good for you. Any other questions?
Yes. We have 5 more minutes.
Oof, only 5 more minutes. We're going to have to wrap this up soon because it cuts off exactly at 1 hour.
What are your thoughts of Greek mythology and comics, such as DC Comics?
Oh, what are my thoughts on Greek mythology and comics, such as DC Comics? Well, you can't really talk Greek mythology and DC without talking about Wonder Woman, because she ends up being the spectrum we mostly view her through. Although, I guess with Shazam, some of those are, but that's just weird, why. But with Wonder Woman, I have my pluses and my minuses with it. I'm a big Wonder Woman fan. I think like the iconography of her is great, but there's been so many different versions of her over the years, like where they kind of reboot their universe like every 10 years. So the gods as a result get reinvented a lot. I was just reading actually coincidentally some Wonder Woman comics last night. And sometimes I like the way the gods are depicted. Sometimes I'm less of a fan. I'm actually they don't appear as much. But I like the way Marvel Comics does some of the Greek gods. Specifically, I never call him this in my books. He's Heracles. But in Marvel Comics, he's Hercules. Their Hercules is pretty great. He makes a lot of sense being the same guy from myth. Like, he's just, he's kind of like, he's a little bit thick. But he's, he's really good-hearted. He does stuff. A lot of things he does are things that we would consider very inappropriate in our day, and they do. But he's actually doing things that made a lot of sense in ancient Greece. I kind of like that take on them. That being said, I feel like both universes kind of have a thing where they don't make the gods distant enough. And it's hard. Once you establish that some gods are superheroes, like Wonder Woman or Thor, it becomes very difficult to make the gods a step beyond. And then give stuff like the Hulk. Like, how strong is the Hulk as opposed to, Zeus? Actually, there's a crazy comic where Hulk fights Zeus. It does not go well for Hulk, but that's a different story. But, I feel like the gods need to be on a different level, and if I were to do it, I would make them, a weird universe removed where they can't really interact. Because it kind of takes the fun out of gods and makes them special if you have human superheroes that have the same basic powers, Like Superman, he's like a god, but he's an alien. Why is an alien, just a random alien from one planet, as powerful as a god from another? It doesn't make sense to me. I know we only have 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes.
So maybe we don't have any other questions super short, right?
Not short ones.
Okay. So like I said, we're writing down these questions. I'm going to do a special Saturday talking about answers I didn't get to thing, because there's just been so many great questions lately. If you missed any episodes, and this will be up there, go to my YouTube. You can also see this archive there. If you're interested in the comics class, write at kids@wordbookstores.com. We're going to have a lot more information about that later today, posted up online. I'll also be talking about that in days to come. And if you draw any pictures of baby Hephaestos, weird lumpy baby Hephaestos, or adult Hephaestos, or any god or goddess, or whomever you want, send it to me at email at George O'Connor. Well, not email. I just wrote email. GeorgeO'ConnorBooks@gmail.com. So I had a great time talking to you all again, as always. And join me tomorrow when we're going to be talking about Heracles, my favorite hero. All right, I'll see you all then. Bye-bye.